Hello and welcome to this episode of Lex Talk Design. I'm Renee Ballard and today joining us is Daniel Chan. Daniel Chan is the CEO and founder of JoJo Ventures, a next-generation AI creative studio. Launched in 2023 in Hong Kong, the studio has completed over 100 projects, including films, television and commercial content. Daniel has led JoJo Ventures to considerable success in the past 3 years, achieving partner status with Runway Creative, and the studio has also won a Polyverse Bronze Award. With a background in business and tech science, Daniel is a serial entrepreneur and angel investor. He also supports the wider industry, where he currently serves as an advisor to Hailstone Labs, and he's also a member of the City UHK Foundation and the Lions Club in Hong Kong. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Renee, for those intro. I'm really glad and honored to be on the Let's Talk Design podcast.
Oh, well, it's great to have you, and not a moment too soon, because I almost feel like I want to get a t-shirt made that says, I get it. I know how you feel about AI, because I feel like every topic of conversation I come across, from anyone I'm meeting, from like mums at the school gate to like our accountant, everyone has an AI story to share. And I secretly, between you and I, most of the stories are quite similar. So to be able to meet someone who's actually in the industry that has experience and knowledge is a godsend. So thank you for you are doing us a solid. So with your area of, like with JoJo Ventures and your area of AI, you're in generative AI. Can you share like your path into generative AI to the industry?
Absolutely. So I kind of stumbled into generative AI and AI in general, I think, for the past 3 or 4 years. I think that was when Midjourney came out, and it was a huge thing around the world, right? Midjourney. It was kind of like an early generation of, hey, we didn't know that you can actually use text, type something up, and create an image of like a cat or like a meme, like a dog. And that was like stunning. So I think the early stage was, we learned kind of AI was more like machine learning, like classification, doing like kind of like understanding sentiments on Twitter, X. That was kind of like the AI that we learned, right? Like 10 years ago, machine learning. And when generative AI came out, right, with ChatGPT, that really is something fun. I can now ask AI to help me generate a bedtime story. I have like a 3-year-old daughter, and she wants to listen. Hey, I want you to tell me a story on the phone. Don't tell me, from a storybook. And I'm like, hey, she knows AI and she enjoys it, right? And she says it's actually better quality and higher quality. And you can actually create any characters, right? Like, Mickey Mouse, fighting like mini force. You can do like different crossovers, like different universes of like, characters. And so that was really cool. And that's how really got me interested and saying, hey, there could be a potential business there. We could disrupt, something that in between we could actually lower the costs, improve the time turnaround for like creative projects like videos. So that's really how it got me started.
Yeah, I have heard you talk before about saving costs in the creative industry, which I think is super cool. And so just for some context as well, I should add, I was introduced to you via our mutual contact, Desmond Chung. And
Yes.
I interviewed Desmond last year, and Desmond
Yeah.
introduced the phrase democratisation of technology, which I'd never heard that before. And it's so clever. And I think
Yes.
that's AI really brings us, is it's very low entry financial to amazing outputs. Like certainly in our creative, like in the design industry and interior design industry, the outputs are sublime. What used to take up to 24 hours to render an image is done in seconds now, which it's
Yes.
just, it's absolute game changer time-wise. But also is the opposite true. Like it is really fast and easy and inexpensive to make this amazing content. So with you leading JoJo Ventures, how are you going to, what areas are you looking to, without giving away your game plan, to keep a competitive edge? Because if it's not high value that people are paying big
Yes.
bucks,
Yes.
what's going to keep your competitive edge?
Yes, I think really thanks to Desmond, right? We kind of really connected, and Desmond was a very talented creative director, and in all sorts of creative field, right? And he was amazed with AI, and you mentioned about the democratization, right? And I think this is actually what is happening with AI right now. I think with like similar to like gun controls. I think back in the the Wild Wild West, cowboys, right? They kind of liberalized the weapons, right? So that in a way it's kind of like in a way, it's kind of like a safe thing for everyone to have like guns and stuff. I wouldn't say that nowadays, like there's a lot of things, but I think in a similar way, that's kind of the idea of kind of like, hey, AI can be used for both good and evil, right? So there's a lot of things, but by actually opening access to everyone, kind of like the internet, so people can actually use it, and so that it's not just in the hands of like a few monopolies, few like big tech companies. So in a way, it's a safer way. And going back to your other question on the competitiveness, right? Now that, okay, everyone now has this AI tool to create images in seconds. What's left for, creative studios, right? Or even people who has like 20 or 30 years of experience in Photoshop creative, right? What's going to happen now that everyone can do something like that? So the way I feel is the way to go is that if we can imagine like a graph kind of thing, right? So the baseline is everyone's, adopting AI tools, and it's going to be happening soon, like now and in the future. The Pandora box is open, right? So everyone's going to have access. They're going to use it no matter what, elderlies, kids, everyone's going to use it. So that the baseline, like you said, would be growing higher and higher. So what's left with professionals and companies like us, right, the AI creative studios, is we got to kind of like improve way faster than the rest of the crowd, right? So there's always this kind of missing thing that really separates us, the professionals, from the crowd, is the taste, the workflows, the tech knowledge, right? All those intricate details. I think that's really what separates the pros, and the reasons why clients find, like us to do like videos, is the last, usually the last 5%, right? To make sure everything looks perfect, pixel perfect, consistent characters, the logos, the supers, the subtitles. I think that really matters. So it's kind of that professionalism that really separates. AI is still a tool, so don't worry. It's just a tool. But I think what really separates, as a business as well as like just individuals, right? Mass public, is that professionalism, being able to use the tools to, make better taste like images and videos.
With the 100, because I read, in your career span and since
Yeah.
you started JoJo Ventures, you've done, film and television content as well. Was there any one particular project that stands out that you or studio created that you thought like game changer, like, wow?
Yeah, I mean, we've experimented quite a lot. So we've done the talking heads, really the things that you see, like, over the past 2 years. There's a lot of people like just like upper body talking heads. I thought that was really cool. And then like you mentioned, we won one of the bronze award for the Polyverse. So it's kind of like an AI film competition hackathon based in Hong Kong's universities at Polytech University. That was the first time that, that we can use AI to make like films, short films, and create characters like models, scripts, music, sound effects, and the whole thing. And I think that was when it kind of clicked.
It's so cool. I love those moments. And I mean, certainly with AI, yeah, whenever we use, like, it always kind of gives you a fright because you think, I think it's the human condition. And this is the one thing that really intrigues me with AI is, I don't know if the old, like a narcissist. It comes from ancient Greek, ancient Greece, where narcissist keeps looking in the pond and he says, I love you. And Echo is swimming in the water and she looks up at him. She's the Echo. And she says, so he says, I love you. She says it back. And a narcissist is born. And sometimes I feel like AI is a little bit like that because I hear people telling me, well, I wanted another opinion. So I went to ChatGPT and it agreed with me. And I don't say anything, but I think it's a little bit like Echo and Narcissist.
Right, right. I totally get that feeling.
So, and is that hard when you're using AI? How do you like maintain an edge? Because my ego is so stroked, of course, just like this guy telling me, he was so tickled pink that it agreed with him. How do you, like, you're in the driver's seat, how do you maintain a balance between AI? Because I assume it's coded to be pathologically helpful and it doesn't ever want to admit defeat. So, how do you see,
Mm.
what tools do you draw on for that?
Like you said, right? I think it was kind of like the AI is kind of like tuned to kind of be nice, be kind, be gentle, and always be kind of in agreement, right, with whoever the humans prompting them. So in a sense, I understand that feeling. It's kind of like echoing back. It's like, hey, I agree with you. And I think, that's actually one hallucination that we don't want. And that's the one thing that really catches most people off guard, right? Because they must like self-reinforce what they believe is true, but actually it's false. There's some safeguards against that. So we need to actually build up the domain knowledge in terms of like, we can't just say, hey, this is what I told you, and you just regurgitate and just tell me back, right? I agree, but something. So we do need domain like experts, like who actually understands it, and then prompt it, and that's how we kind of like judge whether it's actually true or not. For example, even for our tech team, so we do actually have a tech team building like GIF chat. It's like an AI design agent tool. What they're doing compared to just a few years ago is they're using agentic codings tools, right? So basically they could ask questions, they structure the question, they do the design docs, very similar to Creative, right? Where you have like a script, like a storyboard, like a guideline. So the same goes for coding nowadays, and they do the schema, they structure it out, and then they prompt the AI to say, hey, I have these thoughts, I have this architecture, and you actually help me build it out in these series of steps and build out test cases for them. So I think this is actually a very good use case and a good model that we can replicate, across, just like creative or whatever industries. But that's the way I think to go on kind of like leveraging, harnessing the power of AI.
Is there something that you guys use that's like a litmus test to test your AI is I don't know, honest or earnest or the latest or the greatest? Because another thing I've heard as well is because some AI it's capped to what resource it can go to, like it's almost like an upgrade that you've got to do to it. So if you ask some AI who's the president of America, it'll still say Joe Biden because it's stuck in that. Is there
Right.
anything you would tell us as advice as like a way to test, like a test question or something that you can see where your AI stands on something?
Yeah, absolutely. The simplest way is just to ask the AI, what's, when's your knowledge up to, Usually most AI models, they would tell you, quite truthfully and quite honestly. You say, oh, hey, I was trained until like last year, but that's all the knowledge I had. And I guess the second way to do things would be just to connect it to the internet. So I guess the internet is still widely used by humans, right? And so AI could also do something very similar, connect to the internet, search for the answers, have a think about it, and then it would kind of like summarizes the results. And usually they provide like reference links, so it's always good to kind of like double verify and click on it and see actually that post or whatever news is real or true. Sometimes it's like a fake link. But it's getting better. It's getting better. So I think those are the problems, like, usually like, 1 or 2 years ago, where there's like a lot of like fake references. I could recall, there was like a legal case in the US or the States where all the references are, all the cases are actually fake and, was caught by a judge. And so I think those things don't happen nowadays, but it used to happen because most people don't verify; they just trust AI. So those things can happen.
I was just thinking, in a corporate setting when people getting caught out and, I've worked in corporate before and there's
Yes.
always like that person at the boardroom table that wants to find fault with anything. And I can
Yes.
imagine there's a lot of awkward meetings where someone's referring to the wrong thing because, your source is everything. And so that's, I think, a really positive way that the real world will, or humans will the I will offset the AI is checking it via the boardroom where you get scorched to the earth when you get it wrong. In a bad way.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of those people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Every presentation you're like, and they just only feel good if they've found a fault or why
Like
it can't work.
nitpick, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, actually, that's technically speaking, that's But the good thing, I guess, with AI is they really are kind and gentle to humans. They don't really say, "Hey, you're wrong," and kind of like they usually say, "Hey, here's another thing that I just found out," and they share it with you. So, in a way, yeah, it's sometimes easier to speak with an AI nowadays than with a human. Experiences may vary, but yeah, some people do feel it that way. So yeah.
Yeah, that kind of, I totally get it, especially, when you're working full time and if you're choosing to raise a family and you might have a mortgage, life is kind of tough and a bit cutthroat. And even,
Yes.
years ago when I lived in Hong Kong, you would see just huge amounts of people walking, and same in Sydney as well, people walking along the phone.
Hmm.
And part of it is kind of annoying, but then part of it breaks my heart because everyone's a bit exhausted mentally and they just want to zone out playing Candy Crush or whatever it
Yes.
is,
Yes.
Second Life or whatever it is they're doing online. And there was also that, I don't know if you've seen it, that famous film. It's called Her. It's with Joaquin Phoenix and he falls in
Hmm.
AI. It was
Yes.
years, at least 10 years old. At the time, I was like, that is nuts. That is never going to happen. But of course, like you just said, AI is a bit nicer than humans. And so I can see how it happens. It's kind of like a call to help. Like, I don't think I can deal with humans anymore. AI is a lot nicer.
Yes, I think we've seen, on the news, there's, cases where, troubled, teens, especially, right, teens, they might not have the right person or adult to speak with, and they resort to like, AI to kind of help them resolve their issues. So I think it's still, highly debatable, right, nowadays to whether AI is the right, kind of like the expert to mentally to help you, relieve some of those issues. But I think if people are finding solace in playing Candy Crush, then I guess in a way that, AI could be used as a way to elevate people's, issues.
The other thing that gets me with just tech in general and humans, and we do it to animals as well. You know how like people, I think I can never say the word, it's like anthropomorphizing or something. It's when you dress an animal to be like a person. So when you see
Okay.
dogs and they've got bow ties and
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and I'm finding people do that with tech as well. Like I was at the supermarket the other day at the self-checkout and the computer, the checkout register thanked me. Like, thank you for, and you give a shit. Like, you don't need to thank me. You're a robot. Like that's okay. But
Mm,
it's like it's humans are kind of, because the tech doesn't need to be so polite. And I get it because it makes it feel like we're all living in a nicer society. But I think as well, it kind of degrades manners because robots are thanking us and we kind of take thank you for granted. It's weird how we make AI so human.
yes, it does. It also feels a bit queer or eerie, like a little bit strange because by saying these, right? These are kind of like the I don't know how would you kind of classify them, like social norms or like gestures, like every day. It differs, right? In Australia and in Hong Kong, might speaking Cantonese like what điểm à, that's kind of like Cantonese, right? Of saying how are you doing? And if like you said, the robot or AI or whatever just spills those things out, right? Like 多謝晒, and then it might feel weird, right? I mean, I'm not entirely sure because I have a 9-year-old girl. She's been watching some YouTube shorts and she can tell, immediately this is like AI, this is not AI. And I don't think they're not hugely against AI in a way that they can tell stories or even characters. So I think it's just going to be like a phase where people might get used to it. I think especially for the newer generations, the Gen Zs, most of the population, right? I think we're kind of like still like, hey, this is just a computer. This is just like a phone. You're not supposed to act like a human.
Just going back to working in generative AI and in Hong Kong, I understand that with JoJo Ventures, is your target audience, you seem to work a lot with small and medium enterprises.
Yes, actually, we used to start with quite a lot of SMEs just to kind of like get a taste, and I think it's the same for SMEs as well, as they don't have a huge budget, right? And so it's kind of like win-win scenario where everyone tests against each other. I think more recently, for the past maybe 6 months, there's a lot more interest from large corporate. So we've been working with like Welcome. DFI, the Dairy Farm Group, which controls like supermarkets, retail stores. There's like huge branches. I think they're looking into AI as well. So definitely we're seeing a mix, between like large and as well as like medium enterprises. They're enthusiastic because I think everyone's kind of catching up on the wave. They've been on the sidelines for the past 1 to 2 years, right? Kind of looking at it. But I think just over the past 6 months to 6 to 9 months, I think that's kind of like a transitioning point where they're like, hey, what used to go to all like agencies, creative agencies, branding agencies, how about we allocate 10% or maybe 15% of the budget and let's give it a shot, try it out, AI videos, how does it work? And I think we're going to see more of those kind of transitioning.
And is that to help? Because I know you're in generative, so it's not like the customer service side of things. Is that more like their advertising, social media content that you'd be helping?
Yes, so mostly like advertising, marketing. So we're kind of like focusing on those. And usually the video content that we produce for them would be either kind of like TVC quality ads where they can put on YouTube or even on the television broadcast, right? Where we'll help them upscale to 4K. The other part would be more for the regular content. So what we call it as like RC, where they need to post on IG, Facebook. So those things are pretty much, recurring things that you need to post, every month, So that's kind of like the two things that we're mostly producing for them.
And is that with the content, are you focusing more on, like, if it's got humans in it, like, is it animated humans, or are you using like ultra realistic? Is the trend now to go more to ultra realistic human
Yes.
placement?
I think in Hong Kong, there's a lot of digital agencies, web agencies. They kind of focus on the, like you said, the digital human, ultra realistic humans. So that kind of branched off from the chatbots. So the chatbots were huge, right? Back, I think 5 to 10 years ago, there was like a lot of chatbots, on the websites. People type, can you help me? And then it's kind of like it's all like just like an FAQ, and it just kind of responds like, yes, please wait a minute, and then there's going to be a real person. So it's kind of a transition from there. So there's a lot of realistic humans, kind of like becoming more of chatbots where you can ask super realistic AI generated human. So that's also gaining traction. So realistic, there's one where we can digitally clone, like, or generate like an AI realistic human. But there's the other side of things where people are just using, hey, I have this IP, existing IP. It's been, in my shelf for like what, for the past 20 years. I've never been able to make like a cartoon out of it. And now with AI, we can actually help them, bring it to life. So we're seeing growth in both areas.
And I think as well, being where you are in Hong Kong, you're in a really progressive, fast-paced business environment. I can imagine the uptake has been pretty powerful and swift in that region.
Not just us, but there's also like a lot of other studios, upcoming, uprising. And I think with the rise of AI, I mean, there's a lot of what we call one-man company, OPC. I think it's hugely popular now in China. Actually, there's a lot of like one-person, two-person people just using AI to help them. In terms of creatives, they can design the whole websites. Everything can be vibe coded, and then even for like services, they could use AI to help them streamline a lot of things. So definitely, there's a lot of competition uprising, especially in a large city like Hong Kong.
I assume coding jobs are going to be only on the increase. And because to me, the coder that's writing the algorithms and writing the codes for this, I assume, do they need to be like, do you have a team and you have one that's way more techy, but then do you need one that's more psychologically based that they can make observations to get to write into the code of how to interpret a cultural phenomenon, or because, we all have data, but and what I love about AI, it's really good at pattern finding. And then me as the receiver of the pattern, like the reports, I can then make meaning of it. How do you, like with the coders, do they have to be like, what skill set do they have aside from techie?
Yeah, I think coding, because I also come from a coding background. So I used to do a lot of websites, web apps, as well as on the blockchain development side of things for the past 10 years. So I could see the transition from, traditional kind of like computer science graduates to becoming more software developer, kind of this kind of path, right, has changed quite tremendously. So what used to be like, muscle memory, you need to remember the syntax, how to type out like a small function, right, now has changed because they could generate this through AI. Everyone takes a step back now. And I think just like what Renee, you mentioned, it's more about the vision, kind of more taking a step back on the design angle. So again, we're touching design again, the kind of like the creative, the human input. So yes, that's definitely, we need someone that's like a technical leader who's actually experienced, who's done coding before, because it's just like I've mentioned, we need people who have the domain, who have the expertise to verify whether the code or whatever you generate is actually good or not. So that's kind of the first thing. And second thing, to get back to you, is the variation, right? So it's not just coding, but there's got to be, so we call them like product managers, like, people who understands both the tech as well as the audience, kind of the bridge, what features should we do? What's next? What's the product roadmap? What should we build next, right? It's not, so it's kind of like that. So we need like, similar for our creative team. So we can't just have like one person who's very good at, just film and videos. And we need people who are actually good at UI UX design, because we need to generate images, right? We need static assets. So it's like so it's kind of like building like a multidisciplinary team so that we can actually leverage AI to make things work faster. I think that's the right way to put it.
Yes, it's the pipeline, isn't it? Because to me, it's a little
Yeah.
bit like the supermarket. Like,
Yeah.
the supermarket has all the ingredients, and you could make a souffle or you could make lasagna.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a
Exactly.
recipe book and a trolley and to know what to buy, and some of the AI products that we've used, their UX and UI is so good. It's so smooth to extract whatever you need out of it. And is the tech only one part of it? Is it working out that advanced UX system where it's pleasurable to use.
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, like you said, a supermarket, there's like, everything there, but how do we use it, right? The taste, how do we make like a good dish out of all these recipes? So yeah.
It's almost frustrating. Like sometimes you can feel, same with the supermarket and the souffle. You're like, I know you're in there. I just don't know how to, like, I don't know what to get out of it to put it together to make this magic. And I think some of that generative AI stuff
Hmm.
is moving faster than our creative brains can even utilize. Is that
Yeah.
frustrating? Even you've got the product and you're waiting for like you need the minds to catch up to it.
We're trying our best. I think everyone's trying their best. I know there's a huge subset of population that's still trying to grasp, what exactly is ChatGPT. I mean, they're still kind of just getting acquainted to using it. And there's like, small groups of people who are using it every day, right? So there's definitely, there's like a huge cohort, difference, but that's the beauty of it as well, right? So I think that's, there's the freedom of people just like, hey, you want to use it every day, every minute? Fine, go ahead, right? There's people who's like, hey, I don't really use AI. I despise it. That's fine as well. I mean, no one's forcing anyone to, adopt it. So I think that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Moving in towards like the future, if I could just get some insights into where you think where's going to be for you, especially with generative AI, do you see any issues or challenges coming up that are on your horizon?
Yes, I think especially dealing with business clients, first thing is copyright issues, licensing issues. They do question, hey, where do you get your images from? What used to be like, hey, did you get them from iStock photos? Stock photos. Now it's like, hey, you generated, but do you actually have the license? So it's usually a thing, right? We need to explain, okay, yes, we do. There's an umbrella license coming from, whatever we're partnering with, right? From, for example, like Runway. The models, they actually give umbrella license for commercial usage. And I think secondly is the copyright in terms, I guess what I'm trying to say is more on the talents, so the real talents. So for example, one video project, they actually wanted us to clone a real talent into doing things that they haven't really actually gotten consent of. So we need to double check with them and say, hey, did you actually really get explicit consent? Because this is something ethical that we actually need to guard ourselves as well. So we can't just say, I give you a photo, clone it, do something weird. So we got to ask themselves, hey, do you guys actually have consent? So that's really the first question we ask them. Sometimes it gets murky. They might actually have a contract, but the contract didn't mention it's like, hey, you can use AI to kind of like clone it and generate videos of it. Because at that time, they don't have that, right, clause. So they need to catch up with the legal side of things. So it's kind of like a gray area, like a huge gray area where everyone's kind of like, hey, you didn't say that you didn't mention that in the contract. So it's kind of like, hey, how do we deal with that? So it's kind of like a big mess. Everyone's kind of waiting for government to kind of regulate this, the industry, but industry is also catching up. So it's up to kind of like us doing the business, kind of like we do kind of have our own ethos, guidelines, trying to drive the right way. So yeah, it's kind of fun to and interesting to see how this unfolds.
I think that's one of the cool things with everyone having more access to AI and more experience with dealing with it, creating it, using it, and then being able to identify it. Because when you're talking like AI, I think is unfairly getting blamed for stuff that started well before AI in the spirit of deep fakes,
Yes.
Photoshop, where people were copying logos. IP infringements have been going on long before even computers were
Yes.
invented. Everyone's kind of blaming AI for that. AI just kind of makes the experience faster and easier to do that. But people's image has been ripped off for a long time. So I feel sometimes I really feel for AI, it gets blamed for a lot of stuff. And if anything, I think we're more educated now that we can spot it faster. Because, back in the day, in deep fakes and stuff, you didn't think twice. You just thought it was real. You didn't know. Like tech was way a big secret that not many people had access to.
Yes. Yes. I was having a conversation with another friend, I think just like a few years ago on internet. So what did internet really liberate people from, right? And we were saying like most people are saying like, hey, it's the speed of things, right? Just like bring out speed. But I think the core argument was actually internet was liberating access. So it really gave access to what used to be library books concealed in like a local library, right? But now internet basically liberalizes that information, right? So whatever it is, it kind of just liberalizes the access as well as the speed.
What does JoJo Ventures have on the horizon that we should be, like any projects coming up that we should know about?
Yes, there's a lot of projects that we're working on right now. I think one of the one that we almost finished was helping a play actually. It's called the Hong Kong Repertoire Theatre. So they actually release plays with real actors on stage, kind of like a Broadway. So in Hong Kong, so we helped them to do like season trailers. So before they used to actually do like shots, like video shots. People like doing the shooting and everything and interviews with the actors, the directors, and things. And those take time. And also like the scheduling is a huge thing. So what we've helped them done is basically we can use AI to help them to do trailers so that they can actually promote by the time they actually have the program out. So that saves a lot of time. And also because they have something that they can't, release in like, let's just say within 1 month, that's like a too tight deadline to do all the shooting, post editing. And so we can use AI to help them.
Thank you so much for your time. We will put, of course, in the show notes where people can connect with you, how they can find out more about JoJo Ventures and the projects that you've got coming up. And thank you so much for your time.